Hey guys, what's up? Today I'm gonna be teaching. My bad, I'm not gonna do it like this. Alright. For real though, today I made a quick guide on how to get started playing One Piece. It's a kind of overwhelming at first, but the basics are really easy to pick up, even if this is your first card game. Once you find a leader you like to play and start playing more, everything starts to click a lot faster. So today I'm gonna go over what your leader does, and some keywords to look out for, what you need in a deck, and then how to actually play. And without further ado, let's get into it. So the goal of the game is really simple. You and your opponent have a certain amount of life cards, and you want to whittle your opponent down all the way to 0 and land one more hit for lethal. Obviously, there's a lot more hurdles and obstacles in the way, blocking you from getting there, but that's the game at a base level. Now let's look at the core of your deck, a leader card. For the whole guide today, I'm going to be using this OP12 Zoro. And on the bottom right is their life. This number indicates how many life you put in the life pile. You'll see later. Bottom left here, we have the leader's color. This Zoro is a green leader, so that means he can only use green cards in his deck. There are 6 different colors in the game, so we got red, green, blue, purple, black, and yellow. Each of these different colors have their own archetypes and playstyles, and there are a lot of leaders with 2 colors as well. On the top right, you have attack type and power. The attack type is minor, but occasionally relevant for certain cards you want to play, like this Perona, which you're only allowed to use if your leader is a slash type. The number next to it is the leader's power. This is how much they hit for and how much power is needed to hit them. And now the most important part of your card is the leader ability. This is what your deck is going to revolve around and determines your playstyle overall throughout the course of a game. Reading it now, it might not make a lot of sense, but I'm going to talk more about this ability later. The last part of the leader card you need to know is the leader type. Here it's Supernovas and Straw Hat, and this doesn't matter too much, but there are also, once again, some restrictions on cards on which leaders can play it. For example, this card can only be played by a Whitebeard Pirate leader. And other than that, that's pretty much it. So now that we went over your leader, let's go into the actual deck. Since Zoro is a green leader, as I mentioned before, his deck can only contain green cards. A deck is 50 cards total, or 51 including your leader, and you may include only a maximum of 4 copies of any individual card. There are 3 different card types that you'll be working with. So we got characters first and foremost. These are going to be the cards that do most of the heavy lifting. They're going to attack, they're going to activate most of your effects, and overall, the most important part of your deck. Then we have event cards. These are cards that are played out once for an effect and then discarded, kind of like playing out a spell. Then we have stages. Stages have their own dedicated slot on the board. You only can have one in play at a time, and they provide extra small effects throughout the entire game. These cards cannot be attacked and usually very hard to remove. You will find though that there's a lot of decks that don't play stages. Finally, you need 10 Dawn cards, which are going to be used as your main resources throughout the game. Other than that, that's pretty much it. Now we can start playing. So now that we have a leader and a deck, we're going to start playing. We have a OP12 Zoro leader that we've been looking at against a red-green Luffy from OP13. Now this is the board and what it's going to look like. So on the top left we have the life area. This is where your life deck will go, and Zoro had 5 life, so we would put 5 cards here to start the game. Right below that is the Dawn area. This is where your Dawn will all start. Then we have the Dawn play area. This is where all of your active Dawn or in-play Dawn will stay. Then at the top here, we have the character board. This is where your characters will be, with a maximum of 5 total slots for your characters. Right under that is the leader slot right here. This is where your leader will stay the whole game. Next to the leader is the stage area. These are where your stages are. Then we have the main deck area. This is where your 50 card deck will go. And then we have the trash, where all your discarded cards will go. And that's everything for the whole board. To start the game, you and your opponent will put your leader down, and then you both have to decide on the turn order. This is usually done through a dice roll, rock, paper, scissors, a coin flip, whatever you and your opponent agree on. Once you figure out turn order, you're going to grab your deck, you're going to shuffle it, and hand it off to your opponent so they can cut it, and then you can grab your deck again and draw the first 5 cards from the top of your deck. Now, upon looking at your first 5 cards, if you don't like what you're seeing, you can always do a mulligan. So basically what a mulligan is you put your cards back into the deck, and then you will shuffle it again, hand it off to your opponent to cut it, After that, you're going to draw the top 5, and you can only mulligan once, so whatever you take the second time, you have to keep. Once you got your hand, you're going to put the top cards into your life pile, since Zoro's got 5, Luffy's got 4. Then we add our Don deck to the Don area, and we can start playing. In this example, we're going to go first, and turn 1 looks different depending on if you're going first or second. Going first, you add 1 Don from your Don deck, and you do not draw a card. After that, you're good to go. Going second, you instead add 2 Don and draw 1 card. And turn 1, you both cannot attack. We're going to start off the game here, add 1 Don from our deck, and let's look at our hand to see what we can play. Right here, we see this Perona. The top left, she has a 1, which is the amount of Don required we need to play her. So all your cards in One Piece, your leader, your character, your Don, and stages, all have 2 states of being. They can either be active or rested. So the main difference is active means it's stood upright. A rested card is when it is turned sideways, which signifies that the card has been used already. So in the case of Don, you would rest an active Don in order to play out cards, which means you used up the Don, and a rested card does not become active until your next turn. Here we're going to rest this Don to play out this 1-cost Perona. What did she do? Well, let's find out. Now looking at this Perona, we're going to get into our most common keyword, which is on play. So on play is an effect that activates when you play out the card, and in this case it's a searcher. If your leader has this slash attribute, look at the top 5 cards from the top of your deck, reveal up to 1 slash attribute or a green event, add it to your deck, and then place the rest at the bottom of your deck. So we're going to do that here. We're going to look at our top 5 cards, and let's see what we can grab here. Quick disclaimer, if you're playing in person, you want to keep this search away from your main hand so you can't mix any cards up. So as was stated on the Perona, we can only grab slash cards or green event cards. So there's a couple we can't really grab here. This Perona and this Hiyori both don't have the slash attribute on the top right. So the Tashigis and the Kuina all have slash attribute, so we can grab them. We already have Kuina, so we're going to grab this Tashigi here. As I said before, since this is turn 1, we can't attack with any cards, so there's not much else we can do. We're going to end their turn here. The Luffy's going to begin their turn. Since they're going second, they're going to add 2 Don from their Don deck, and then he's going to draw 1 from the top of his deck. To start their turn, he's going to rest 1 Don and play out this Thousand Sunny stage. So let's look at what this card can do. So this Thousand Sunny also has an on play very similar to the Perona, which is a top 5 search for a specific card, but it also has an activate main right here. Both these keywords are activating effects, but on play is a lot different because it is only activated when played and happens once. Activate main, however, is an effect that you can activate multiple times as long as the card's on the field. You can even activate it the turn it is played as well. So, the Luffy's going to activate his on-play effect from Thousand Sunny, look at top 5, and grab this Usopp here. He's going to put the rest at the bottom of his deck, then he's going to rest another Don to play out this Nami Searcher here, which is another searcher for a Straw Hat Crew type member. And now, as stated before, it's turn 1, so Luffy can't attack, so he's going to pass over to us. From here on out, the start of every turn is going to look exactly the same. You're going to restand all of your rested cards, the refresh stage. Then we're going to add 2 Don from our Don deck, bringing us to 3 Don total. Then we draw 1 from the top of our deck, add it to our hand. Now we can start our turn. We're going to go through some combat now. Since it's turn 2, we can attack. Looking at all your character and leader cards, they all have a power level on the top right of the cards. Here, these cards both have 2000 power, and you need greater than or equal to amount of power to be able to make a successful attack. Since these cards have equal power, you'd think that Perona can attack into this Nami right now. However, since Nami is active, we cannot attack it. You can only attack rested characters. This is different when it comes to the opponent's leader, however. You can attack them whether they are rested or active, but since Perona has 2000 and Luffy has 5000, that attack won't go through. There is a way we can get her to reach 5000 power though. So we saw before that we can use Don to play out cards, but we can also use active Don to increase a card's power level. So if you've been a little extra observant here, you'll notice that the Don says your turn plus 1000. That means that each Don attached to this Perona increases her power level by 1000. So we attach 3 here, she goes from 2000 to 5000. If you've noticed, however, though, it says your turn plus 1000, so this attack buff only lasts for your turn. Once it goes back to their turn, every card with Don attached will go back to their original power. In order to attack, we're going to turn our card sideways to rest it, and then declare the target of our attack, which is Luffy here. And that's how we can utilize Don to raise attack powers to reach higher numbers. We're not going to do that here, it's a waste of its turn, so we're going to try to play out another character from our hand. Looking at our hand, there's only a couple options we can do. We can either play a Koshiro or the Zoro events here. Since it's early, it's much better to play out this Koshiro, and these event cards are a lot more useful later. Let's look at Koshiro real quick, see what he does. So he's a 2 cost, 1000 power. He also protects our characters from being killed by effects. And other than that, he's not very strong, but he does have keyword blocker. We're going to keep this in mind for later, because it's going to come up very soon. So, to play him out, we're going to rest 2 Don, put him on the field, and we still have 1 more Don left, so we can attach it to our leader and swing 6,000 into 5,000 at Luffy. The Luffy is going to take the hit here, so he's going to add the top of his life into his hand. And we have no more attacks and no more cards to play, so we're going to end our turn right here. And that's the very basics of offense in One Piece. Luffy's going to begin their turn now, so he's going to restand all of his cards, add 2 Don from his Don deck, and then draw 1 card into his hand. Here, the Luffy is going to play out a Zoro, and let's look at what Zoro does. So, he has an on-play effect. If you have the Film or Straw Hat Crew leader, he can make 2 of his rested Don cards as active. He also has an end of turn, which is an effect that activates at the end of turn, where he restands his character as active after it is rested. The Luffy will utilize this Zoro's on play to restand 2 Don, and then he's going to activate main on his stage, rest it, and attach 1 rested Don to his leader. With 1 Don attached, he's going to swing 6,000 into 5,000 at us. So in One Piece, when it comes to defense, there's a couple of options we can do. Looking at our hand, we have cards with counter on it. So we can discard these cards to add power to our character or our leader's power level, so we could bring it over the opponent's power level. So in this case, Zoro's at 5, Luffy's at 6, but we can discard these cards, 1, 6,000, and then discard another one for 7,000. Now the attack does not go through. Real quick note though is that this buff only lasts for that battle. So if another character were to attack you this same turn, even though you discarded those 2 cards for your 7,000 power buff, you would instead go back to 5,000 for the next battle. Rather than just using character cards, we have another way to counter out using counter events. I'm going to show you an example here real quick. Here we got Demon Ore 9 Sword Style Ashura Blades Drawn Dead Man's Game. This event has counter on it, so if we have 1 active Don during our defense, we can use this card to gain 3,000 power during a battle. Just like a normal character counter, you would just discard the card, rest 1 Don to gain that power. We can also utilize a blocker with Koshiro here. A blocker can block an attack by resting itself. When you rest a blocker, you redirect an attack, and now the Luffy is forced to attack the blocker. The action of blocking requires you to rest the blocker itself, so if a blocker is already rested, you cannot use it to block. And if you want to keep the blocker alive as well, you can utilize counter. In this case, however, we're not going to block and we're not going to counter out. We're going to instead actually just take the hit here. Oh, this card we took has a trigger on it. So a trigger is an effect you can activate only when you take a hit and the card you drew from the top of your life has this trigger on it. In this case, it can rest up to 1 of your opponent's characters. You can choose not to activate the trigger if you want to keep the card in your hand for later, but if you want to activate it, you would just discard the card and then activate the trigger effect. So we can use the trigger here to rest either the Zoro or the Nami. Here, let's just rest the Nami, just because. This is a stupid play. I just wanted to show you how the trigger works. Anyways, the Zoro he has on board cannot attack since he just played it out this turn, so the Luffy here is going to end his turn. So let's start our turn. We're going to restand all our rested cards, add 2 Don from our Don deck, and draw 1 card from the top of our deck. Looking at our hand, we have 5 Don. Let's see what we can play with. So we can play out Tashigi here for 5 Don. Let's do that. So we'll rest 5 Don, put her on the field, and let's look at her on-play effect. She's going to allow us to rest up to 1 of your opponent's characters with a base cost 6 or less, and then give 3 rested Don to your Zoro leader. So, since we just played her out, we're going to activate her on-play. We're going to rest their Zoro, then give 3 rested Don to our Zoro leader. Now, having specifically 3 Don on Zoro is very important. Let's look at Zoro's leader ability. Zoro's leader ability requires at least 3 Don attached to him, as you can see here. So when Zoro has 3 Dawn attached, if this leader battles your opponent's character during this turn, set this leader as active. Then this leader cannot attack your opponent's characters with a cost of 7 or less during this turn. So essentially, with 3 Dawn attached, Zoro is allowed to attack twice in one turn. So that's Zoro's leader ability. The whole deck revolves around trying to play off of that, giving Zoro power and resting characters so we can attack characters and then the leader. So we're going to do that here. We're going to rest Zoro. We're going to declare the target of our attack, which is their Zoro. And since Zoro has 3 Dawn attached to him, his power is 8,000. So it's going to be 8,000 versus 5,000 into the enemy Zoro. This should be an easy hit, right? However, when we look at their board, Luffy has 2 Dawn standing. Let's look at Luffy's leader ability. Luffy also has a Dawn X1 leader ability right here. And Luffy has a Dawn attached, so he can use this. If you have 5 or less active Dawn cards, you may rest any number of your Dawn cards. For every Dawn rested this way, your leader or up to one of your Straw Hat Crew type members gains 2,000 power during this battle. So, Luffy can rest 1 Dawn here to add to Zoro, making him 7,000 power, and then he can rest another to bring it to 9,000. Now the attack doesn't go through. So Luffy's leader ability can be done as many times as you want as long as he has Dawn to use. So their Zoro does not die due to the buffs he got from Luffy's leader ability, but we can activate our leader ability, bring Zoro to active, and we can't attack Zoro since it's a 7 or less, but we can attack Luffy now. So it's going to be 8,000 to 5,000, and he's going to take the hit. And just because we can, we're going to rest Perona and kill their Nami, because she's rested, and the Nami's going to go. And we have no more moves here. The Tashigi can't attack. As a reminder, you can't attack with characters the same turn they're played. So we're going to end our turn. And that's it for the basics of the game, really. I'm going to skip ahead to a late game example just to show you how the game will end. And now we got an end game board for these 2 leaders. So looking at what's going on the board, we have 0 life in our life pile. The opponent has 4 characters and 1 leader, so that's potentially 5 attacks that we have to defend. So it's not looking good for us. So let's look at the hurdles we have to jump over. He has 1 blocker here, 3 Dawn setup, and that's important because of his leader ability, as we saw before. He has 1 life card left. He also has 5 cards in hand, which can be used as additional counter. So he has a decent amount of defensive options, but we're going to die next turn, so we're going to try to end the game here. Looking at our side, we have 3 characters with at least a minimum of 5,000 power each. So we can use all of these characters to attack Luffy without attaching Dawn. We also have 10 Dawn to utilize. We can either use it to raise attack power or play out cards. Let's see if there's anything that could help us win. These are the 3 cards that we have in hand. So we got these 3 cards and they're all pretty useful in this scenario. First and foremost, we got these events. So if we attack with our leader, we rest him, but if we play out this card for 3 Dawn, it will restand our leader so that Zoro can attack again. And we have 2 of them, so if we want, we could do it twice. Now, we also could play the Kuina here. Right here has an activate main. You may rest this character, rest up to one of your opponent's characters with a base cost of 4 or less. Then we give up to 3 rested Dawn cards to our leader. In this scenario, these cards are all pretty useful, and let me show you how. So that Nami is a blocker, which could take an attack, but it's also 4 costs, so our Kuina can reach her to make her become rested, and remember that blockers have to be active in order to block. So if we force the Nami to become rested, there's no more blocking from her. So let's try to begin the attack here. Real quick, I want to feel out how much counter he really has, so we're going to rest this Zoro and swing 5,000 into Luffy 5,000. In response, this Luffy's going to discard this card for 1,000 counter, bringing him to 6,000. The attack doesn't go through. So we got 1 extra card out of his hand, so he has 1 less defensive option now. So now after that, we're going to begin our full assault here. We want that Nami blocker to get out, so we're going to play Kuina out, and it's not an on-play, it's an activate main, so it doesn't activate when we play her out. So we have to manually rest the Kuina using her activate main in order to utilize the effect. So we're going to do that, rest her. Then we can rest this Nami through her effect. After that, we're going to give 3 of our rested Dawn to Zoro as the last part of her effect. Now we're going to attack with Law, 6,000 to 5,000, and Luffy's response here is he's going to use his leader ability to rest 1 Dawn to gain 2,000 power. And after that, we're going to also swing with Kuina as well. So we're going to rest her, swing 7,000 to 5,000. Let's see what he does. Here he's actually going to take his last life, bringing his hand to 5. Now with his last life gone and no blockers, he is vulnerable to a lethal attack. So you might think just to stack the rest of your Dawn onto Zoro and then swing 14,000 into Luffy with 5,000. And you'd think there's a high chance this would go through, but we actually have a better play in this scenario. So instead I'm going to attach 3 Dawn, bringing him to 11,000. And then I'll swing 11,000 to 5,000. Let's see what he does. In response, Luffy's going to rest 2 to play out this Charleston counter event. Reading the card here, it actually has 2 effects. So it's going to allow him to gain 4,000 power for this battle. And then also if he wants to trash a card, he can stand 3 Dawn as active as well. So we played out this Charleston event to gain 4,000 and he's going to discard it. But he will also use the secondary effect, trash 1 card and restand 3 Dawn. Even though the event he played gave him another 4,000 power, he still doesn't have enough to get out of an 11,000 swing. So he's going to use his leader ability one more time. He is going to rest 1 for 11,000, and then he's going to rest another 1 for 13,000. Now we still have 3 active Dawn to play with. We're going to use that event we saw earlier. We're going to rest 3, play out this event. Now Zoro becomes active again. Now we're going to swing 11,000 into 5,000 one more time. He's going to use his leader ability to gain 2,000 power. He's going to discard this Chopper card here for 2,000. Then he's going to discard another one for 2,000. And now his last card is a brick. There's no counter on it. And just like that, we win the game. Now there are so many ways that we could have went about this last lethal turn, and same on the other side as well. Luffy could have played this very differently, but I just wanted to show you a quick example of how a game ends. Now finally I'm going to go over some terms, keywords that I didn't get to go over in the example game. So the first keyword I'm going to get into is rush. So characters when they're played out cannot attack the same turn they're played. They can only attack starting their next turn. However, when it comes to rush characters, this is completely ignored. When you play out the character, you can immediately attack with them. We then have rush character. So this is the same concept of rush, where they can attack the same turn they're played. However, they can only attack characters. They're not allowed to attack the enemy leader. Then we have double attack. Double attack means that when this card attacks the leader and it goes through, they don't take 1 life, they take 2 life into their hand. This doesn't mean though that when they're at 1 life and you land a double attack that ends the game. They only instead just take the 1 life. We then have when attacking, so when this specific card attacks, you activate the effect on the card. This isn't really a keyword, but this is Dawn minus. So most of the time you would rest Dawn to play out cards or effects. In this case, you actually subtract Dawn from your Dawn pile into your Dawn deck. So this Mamoragan, for example, if you want to play this out, you would minus 2 Dawn into your Dawn deck. When it comes to minus Dawn though, you can use either active Dawn or you could subtract rested Dawn, which have already been used. We then have banish. So when you usually land an attack on their leader, they take 1 life into their hand and they can activate a trigger if there's a trigger on it. However, when it comes to banish, instead of the card going to their hand, this card will go straight to the trash. So this also means that they can't activate any triggers that were on the card. Finally, I want to clear up something that's going to be really confusing. So there are a lot of different kinds of removal in this game. So there's either KO, trash, and then bottom deck / sending back to your hand. These cards can remove characters from the opponent's board without attacking. And usually it ignores if they are rested or active, unless the card specifically says they have to be rested in order to remove it. Although these 3 cards essentially do the same thing by removing, there are key differences between the 3. First and foremost, we have KO. So usually a character is KO'd by battle when it gets hits. However, there are cards which straight up say, just KO this character when you play this card. This is important. There are KO cards with on KO abilities. So if you remove this card by KO, this will activate this KO ability. However, there are other removal. We have trash, which effectively does the same thing. It sends the character straight to the trash. However, this is not KOing the card. It is trashing the card, so it does not trigger on KO abilities. Then we have bottom deck / sending back to your hand. So the card goes to the bottom of the deck or to their hand instead of the trash. This is just removing the card. This does not trigger the on KO ability because you're not killing the card. You're removing it. So the takeaway, always read specifically which verb the card uses, because KO and trash look exactly the same verbally and in action, but the game, they're mechanically very different. These distinctions are also really important because there are cards that protect against specific kinds of removal. For example, this Burgess cannot be KO'd by effect. It specifically only says by KO effect, so it can be removed by a trash effect or a basic removal effect. Now for a different example, we have this Rosinante here, which says that if your card would be removed by an effect, you may trash one card from your hand instead. This generically covers all types of removal, including KO. So this card will protect from all kinds of removal for all of your blue navy type characters, as long as you trash a card from your hand. So yeah, when it comes to removal or having anti-removal, make sure you read every single word of the card and make sure you completely understand what it protects against or what a card can remove. Other than that, that's pretty much it. That's all the basics I wanted to cover. Even after this, it's going to be a little confusing while you're playing. You might forget some stuff, but give it a couple games, find a deck you really like, and once you fully understand the deck and what you want to do with it, the game's going to get a lot easier and you can start really having fun with it. Well, that's it for me. So good luck, have fun.